Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 24th episode of Crime Over Wine, the only podcast with head-scratching true crime stories that are just better over a bottle of wine. I'm your host, Liam Collins, and my guest co-host this week is being shipped in all the way from the city of brotherly love, a true northeastern gal with some southern roots, too. My guest co-host this week is Morgan Shearer. Hello, Morgan. How are you? So good to see your face.
Hi, Liam. It's so good to see your face after all these years.
I know. Right. So Morgan and I first met probably almost 3, 4, 5 years ago, almost at this point.
3, 4, 5, one of those.
Oh gosh, I don't even want to think about how long. But we were both communication students at Elon University in Elon, North Carolina. And now Morgan is a project manager at CDI in New York. And Morgan, you were just telling me a little bit about what you do. And frankly, it's a little over my head. So just tell me, tell everyone what's going on.
Yeah, we were in all these communications classes together. And then I was just telling you that I do absolutely nothing that I spent 4 years studying for and am drowning in loans for. But no, I'm a project manager at an IT consulting firm based out of New York. So I am currently at my parents' in Philly, but as of next week, I will be back in New York. So exciting stuff coming up.
Oh, in the city that never sleeps. And, I'm from right outside of Manhattan. And so, that's just a little place in
You're
my
just
heart.
such a Big Apple girly.
I'm such a Big Apple girly. Well, Morgan, I'm dying to drink wine with you. And so I'm just going to go right
I think we both had a long day and we deserve a fat glass of wine.
I've had such a long day. Yeah. And not that I need the excuse, but it definitely helps.
It does.
So
eases the conscience.
It does a little bit. So this week we are drinking Seven Deadly Zins Zinfandel. It's a vibrant, sweet bouquet of raspberry jam, molasses, and cinnamon toast. Evoke the senses of carefree, youthful nights. Speaking of carefree, youthful nights, we were just talking about how, we're both a couple, old people now. And, a couple years ago, we were, a little not so much. So
a little crazy.
Yeah, a little crazy. We're a little crazy. And now I I was just saying, I literally get hungover just by doing this podcast. And so thinking about what I was doing 4 years ago, I was okay, not the same. We're not the same.
We are not the same person we were before, but this sounds wonderful, Liam. This is a good choice.
I am really excited to drink this because this is the reason I picked this out was because it was the first Zinfandel that I saw on the shelf. And so I have never done a Zinfandel before on this podcast. And so I'm really excited to do that with you. But I also, so you said that you had a special request. You said you wanted to do red especially. And so I did kind of see that you were a red girl for sure. I do need to know what kind of reds you typically go for.
Okay, you're going to judge me because I know this podcast is all about drinking good wine and talking about true crime, but I am a boxed wine girl till the end.
Listen. I will never judge someone for boxed wine. One of the best Pinot Noirs I've ever had was a boxed wine.
Really?
So I will never judge someone for a boxed wine. I listen. First of all, you get a whole lot more bang for your buck. I can go on. This is my little box soapbox I'm about to get on to about boxed wine because I enjoy me some boxed wine. I think you get a whole lot more for your bang for your buck, a whole lot more wine, and it's pretty friggin' good. It's not the best wine in the world, sure, but for what you're trying to get out of it, I'm down. So no judgment on this front. Girl.
Yeah, I should have known that you would accept me for that. But yeah, typically. Honestly, like I said, my only request was red wine because that is my favorite. But I love Merlot, Cab Sav, can't go wrong with this. I must have had Zinfandel at one point in my life, but I don't remember when. So we're branching out. This is good.
We're branching out. Yeah. And I'm also, so I say it every week, I feel I'm not a huge sweet girl. So I am really, that's why I typically stay away from the Zinfandels, but I told myself I'm going to do a little bit, I'm going to branch out a little bit. And so I'm glad that we're both branching out. And so let's do this.
And this cinnamon toast, it sounds exciting. So I'm ready.
Yeah, I am really ready. So cheers to you, Morgan. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Liam.
On. I'm nervous.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, okay. That cinnamon toast, though, that's a really great way to describe that. I'm definitely getting cinnamon in there for sure.
And absolutely already getting carefree, youthful nights. So
yeah, true.
10 out of 10 in my book.
I also feel that's just us. I feel we are a carefree, youthful night.
We are
with a glass of wine. That's us. So
no, I like this.
Yeah, I will say definitely vibrant flavors for sure. It definitely fills the mouth in a really good way. The sweet bouquet of raspberry jam, I am definitely getting to. I'm gonna have to take one more sip, but it's definitely sweet. It's on the sweeter end of the scale for sure.
Yes, it is. But I will say the one thing that I haven't gotten, I'll take another sip, is the molasses. I can't really taste that yet.
I don't think I would be able to pick out what molasses tastes like.
You're absolutely right. So,
so I'm like, but yeah, I guess, I don't know. I also feel like those kind of flavors, like those like subtle flavors that you don't really like think about, like come out like the longer that it like aerates and stuff.
Yes.
So we'll just like pick it up in the middle of this episode and like, see if that molasses is popping.
Yeah, you're going to be halfway through the case at the most important part, and I'm going to be like, I tasted it, the molasses. Yes. It's here.
You know what?
It's entered the chat.
Might be my new favorite flavor of wine by the end of this episode, so we're going to find out about that for sure. But Morgan, I do have to move on to our story only because
no, I'm excited.
Oh man, this is I went into a rabbit hole researching this episode, and so I'm so excited to hear what you have to say about this. And I know you know this story too. So,
I do.
Yeah. Well, so Morgan, this week I am going to tell you a story that honestly you may not even believe, but I can promise you this movie-like story is 100% true. It's all about a wife's mission to become financially independent, but how far will she go to get there? This week, Morgan, I want to tell you the story of Juliet Lynn Turner, the Antifreeze killer. For our story this week, Morgan and I are going to bring you to Forsyth County, Georgia. Julia Lynn Turner, who goes by Lynn, is out for the day. Her boyfriend, Randy Thompson, who has been described as her common-law husband, is at his apartment not really feeling all that great. He had just had surgery a few days prior because he had like really severe allergies, so he had like sinus issues. And on top of that, he really thought that he had been coming down with the flu. He was throwing up, his stomach hurt, and he had like, TMI, but like really bad diarrhea. The day before Randy went to the hospital for all of this, he got an IV, was treated, and was released the same day and actually started to feel a bit better. He had a follow-up doctor's appointment that Monday too to look at the progress from his surgery, and the doctor said to make sure that he brings up these kinds of symptoms. When Randy went home from the hospital, Lynn took care of Randy for a bit, comforted him, even made him some Jell-O before bed to make him feel better. That Monday, Randy was not at work. He was a firefighter for the county, and his friends and family were well aware of the medical problems he had been having recently and were really concerned, mostly because he was this really big, tough guy and not really prone to illness all that much. So him calling out of work was a true testament to how badly he had been feeling. On top of that, he and Lynn were having some problems in their relationship too, so his friends and family took it upon themselves to make sure that Randy was able to get to his doctor's appointment that Monday.
I will say at first, when you said that he had surgery for allergies, I was judging Buddy Boy a little bit, but after all those symptoms, that makes it a little more reasonable.
So to be clear, so I think the like surgery for like was more so because his allergies had gotten so bad that he started having sinus issues, not because like he had been like it was like he wasn't like sneezing a lot. Like
fair. So, and with allergies
so it was like a real
upon
thing.
Us, I shouldn't be judging.
Right.
So
no, but fair.
But Liam, you said they were having some problems. What kind of problems were they having?
Well, some pretty significant ones, actually, Morgan. Randy and Lynn originally lived together, but about a year prior, Randy had decided to move out of the house. The couple had gotten really actually pretty violent with each other, screaming, yelling, and even getting physical at times. There were a lot of domestic assault calls to the home, and Randy even got some charges at some point for giving Lynn a bloody lip. The judge dismissed those charges with the contention that they stay far away from each other, calling their relationship, quote, far too volatile.
So obviously this stay away from each other wasn't happening when she was making him Jell-O and tucking him in at night when he was feeling sick.
Yeah, that didn't last very long. They did not stay away from each other for very long. They really actually couldn't. They had a daughter together, and shortly after this order, Lynn got pregnant with their second child, a little boy. Fast forwarding back to January of 2001, Randy's friends and family were calling him to try and make sure that he got to his appointment and got the medical attention that he needed, but they were unsuccessful. They tried to get Lynn to intervene, and she told them where they could find a key. So Randy's friends went to his apartment apartment, saw his truck still parked outside and couldn't find a key, but worried and knowing that Randy was on the other side of the door, possibly in need of help, they broke the door down and their worst fears were realized. Randy was dead on the couch, wrapped in blankets, clearly having died in his sleep in the middle of the night.
Oh my God. Liam, I don't know if you know this, but when they walked in and realized that he was dead, did they immediately attribute that to the illness and sickness and whatnot that he had been feeling, or?
So, kinda. I think it depends on who and when you ask, kind of thing. And we're gonna get there, so definitely hold that thought for me. But I would imagine they probably, the initial instinct, anyways, is probably something to do with the illness. But I think the best tease I have is maybe once they start trading notes. So,
okay.
Yeah. So help arrives for Randy, but it's far too late for that. And so the authorities take Randy away and perform all of the tests they need to find out what had happened to him. Much later on, they estimate that Randy likely died between midnight and 2 a.m. So as for his cause of death, though, the medical examiner determines that Randy likely died of an irregular heartbeat, or better known as a heart attack.
It's always a heart attack, I feel like, in these true crime stories, until it's not.
Right? Until it's not. Right. Yeah. I mean, look, so here's the thing. I think, from a surface level perspective, right? If he's having all these issues, his sinus issues, he's having these stomach problems, they think he has a flu, so I'm sure he's having breathing issues too. Heart attack, okay, it feels like at some points, if it's big enough, he's a bigger dude, heart attack seems like the right way to go. I think a reasonable person would assume that all that, was too much for his heart to handle. And, and who knows what else was going on inside their head, inside of his body too, right? At least from their perspective.
Yeah, and it sounds like so many people knew of all these issues he was having, so It probably wasn't a big jump at all to assume that that's what happened.
Yeah, right. Well, all while Randy's friends and family, including Lynn, were mourning the sudden and bizarre death of Randy, so was the town. Randy had an extensive history as a Forsyth County first responder. He first got into the line of work as a volunteer firefighter, then a county sheriff's deputy, and now as a county firefighter. So he gets the full treatment at his funeral. The processional, the flyover, a 21-gun salute, the works. And especially in the South, word about a fallen hero does not go unnoticed as the talk of the town. Word quickly spread throughout the area about the Forsyth County firefighter who unusually grew ill and died in the middle of the night, right when he seemed to be doing a whole lot better. That word traveled to the next town over in Cobb County to a man named Mike Archer, a car salesman who had a pretty unique connection to the family. Mike knows Lynn Turner fairly well, and when the details about her boyfriend's sudden death meets his ears, he shouts out, "I knew it." And what he knows goes back almost 10 years, because the circumstances that he is hearing about concerning Randy seem eerily familiar of his old friend, Lynn's first husband, Lynn Turner. Back in 1995, just a county over from where Randy Thompson would die less than 6 years later, Lynn and her then husband, Glenn Turner, were working through some of their biggest problems. Glenn and Lynn met at a party one night. Glenn was a Cobb County police officer, and Lynn was dating another officer on the force in 1991. Lynn worked as a 911 operator in the county and has a fairly long and lengthy career in law enforcement. Lynn worked for interned with or volunteered for several different agencies between Georgia and Tennessee and tried to, at one point, become a Cobb County police officer herself, but failed the psychological exam. Now, it's not clear why she failed exactly, but we do know why she did not fail, even though she probably should have. She didn't fail because of any drug-related issues, though not because she didn't have any, but because she failed to report them. Lynn was adopted at a young age after her birth mother gave her up for adoption. Later on, as she grew up, her adoptive parents divorced and her adoptive mother took custody and remarried. But Lynn and this stepfather did not get along at all. She wanted to be independent and he wanted to be more controlling. Probably a lot of issues, trusting parental figures pretty easy to understand, I would imagine anyways. But as she got into her teenage years, those issues started materializing through drugs, and she was admitted to a substance abuse clinic in Atlanta when she was 17.
17, wow.
Yeah.
I've heard in a couple other like true crime podcasts, they always say like you feel bad for the kid for like not a great upbringing or maybe just like not great circumstances, but that doesn't really forgive potentially what she might do.
Yeah, I mean, of course, definitely doesn't forgive it. Like, absolutely not. I do think it's like important to understand, like, she like had like showed problems like very early on, right?
Yeah.
And so, it does make me, I mean, clearly, like, she got the help, like, and I also always say too, like, like whenever these types of situations pop up, like, for example, with the Emma Walker case, episode 20, she, Riley, was having all these issues, and it just seemed like, at some point, like, someone should have intervened and like did something that didn't happen in that case. And so, like, she got what she, the help that she needed pretty early on. And so it makes me wonder, like, if, like, obviously there was something else, up there that, like,
definitely
wasn't shaking loose.
Definitely. So, yeah. She had access to all the resources that so many people don't have. So, yeah.
And, like, grew up, like, again, like, in a very, like, in a wealthy household, like, in a wealthy part of the country, like, had everything at her disposal for the most part. So, yeah. Well, Lynn and Glenn's marital issues didn't appear to have anything to do directly with Lynn's history of substance abuse. It was mostly related to money. Lynn was working as a 911 operator until she married Glenn, which is when she left the job not long after. Because the family was constantly strapped for cash, Glenn also took on some shifts at a local gas station to pay the bills and to keep up with their extravagant lifestyle. And I also, like, even read that, like, it's possible that Lynn might have even, like, owned that gas station somehow. So, like, again, I saw that, like, in a fleeting reference, but, like, so take that as well. But Lynn was a spender, and, like, big time. And this was one of the biggest problems they had been having since they got married. Lynn was always spending more and more money, and Glenn was having a heck of a time keeping up with her expenses. And the signs of her prodigality did start pretty much right away. The week after Lynn and Glenn tied the knot in August of 1993, Lynn went out and bought 2 Camaros without Glenn even knowing about them until, like, she brought them home. Despite this prolific spending, Glenn was still head over heels in love with Lynn, even though his family didn't really understand why. They saw trouble between Lynn and Glenn right off the bat, and it was mostly because they had a pretty decent idea of what Lynn was really marrying Glenn for, which was to use and abuse his finances.
Go off, queen. No, as a chronic spender myself, like, I don't even think I would consider buying 2 cars without your new husband knowing about it. But quickly, Liam, I want to jump back up to the 911 operator job. I feel like that would be, and maybe it's just because, like, I have a morbid fascination with true crime, which is why we're here, and I'm just a nosy person. I feel like that would be such an interesting job to have.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? So, what's funny is, so, like, every time I like listen to those, like, 911 calls that I play on this podcast, I'm always like, like, maybe I should, like, really change my career and, like, be a telecommunicator.
Do you want to do it together?
Like, also, like, I think I might, but, like, then I, like, quickly talk myself out of it because I'm like, okay, like, someone would call and, like, be freaking out, and I would just be like, and I would just absolutely collapse. Like, I don't think I can handle it. So, but I do think it would be, I think those people have, like, really fascinating stories, but, like, also, like, again, we're going to get into, like, how messed up Lynn is, like, much later on, but, like, like, there's no doubt in my mind that she was just like doing it because she had, like, some weird fascination with that. Clearly, I mean, like, she was so into being alone. I mean, she was like she worked for all these different agencies, like, around the area.
It sounds like it was her, like, sole like purpose in life was to be involved in all of these different, like, entities within, like, law enforcement and everything.
Right. Yeah. She wanted the end. She wanted the end on these, in this, like, very niche lifestyle. And, God knows for what reason, but, like, she wanted it.
And she certainly found herself in it. So.
Oh, she certainly found herself in it. Yeah, for sure. But I do agree. I do think that would be, and I also have a lot of respect for those people because those are, like, a lot of times, like, the unsung heroes of the law enforcement 100%. Agencies. So for the next year and a half, half, Glenn and Lynn lived a pretty complicated married life. They were on and off fighting intensely, but also on and off in love with each other. But as March 1995 approached, things took a turn for the worse. The on and off fighting turned into fighting almost exclusively. Glenn slept most nights in the guest bedroom. Glenn had caught on that Lynn was likely not being 100% faithful. In fact, he may or may not have known that the person she was sleeping with would be indeed Randy Thompson. Randy's family later told police that they, including Randy, thought that Lynn was divorced and that they had no idea that she was still living with Glenn when Randy had met her. Just days before March 3rd, 1995, Glenn told friends that he was ready to leave Lynn and also said something that just wasn't right about her. He made a pretty morbid comment in hindsight. He said to his friends that if he had died, then Lynn probably had something to do with it.
I'm just putting it out here now. I hope I never have to mutter those words about my future husband to anyone. That is so terrifying.
Yeah, red flag of the century.
And you hear it so often where it's if something happens to me, look into this person. Mm-hmm. I'm I don't even think I have someone that cares enough about me that wants to see me dead. And this and Chico over here.
Well, and there's I guess that's can't be a coincidence. You know what I mean? Again, we're about to get to what happened, but it's just what we know now. It's 2 + 2 = 4.
Well, truly. And I feel it's a fair assumption to say that it's not the guys that she's picking in the relationships that it's the problem.
Right.
The tumultuous relationships, they're with every guy, it seems that she has, to the point of physical violence for each one and just screaming and not. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, common thread, for sure. Common thread, right? Yeah, well, not long after this conversation begins a series of events that I'm sure will give you this really bizarre kind of reverse deja vu. Glenn felt like he had come down with the flu. He had been vomiting uncontrollably and had really bad stomach ache, too. As it only got worse, Glenn ended up checking into a hospital on March 2nd. They hooked him up to an IV, treated him, and sent him home that night when he said that he started feeling better. Well, that night, Lynn says Glenn was acting really strange. She said she woke up in the middle of the night to Glenn talking to himself and standing near the balcony saying he was going to jump off of it because he thought that he could fly. Then Glenn walked down to the basement and Lynn followed him to see him pick up a can of gasoline and try to drink it, but she stopped him. Eventually, Glenn went to sleep in the guest room. The next morning, Lynn said Glenn felt a bit better, felt a little bit more like himself, and so in the kitchen, Lynn made him some breakfast, gave him a cup of Jell-O, and sent him back to bed before running out to go run some errands around 9:30 that morning. Just 5 hours later, Lynn returned home to an eerie quiet that had set over their house. She went to go check on Glenn, and he wasn't moving at all. He had died in the guest bed, wrapped in blankets, clearly in the middle of his sleep. And you want to know what the medical examiner ruled his death, Morgan?
Let me guess. Heart attack?
Yep. The medical examiner says almost word for word the same determination that a different ME would rule on Randy's death 6 years later. Irregular heartbeats or a heart attack.
This is just crazy to me. I'm almost at a loss for words. And I have just such an intense dislike for Jell-O that I think that's kind of off-putting me as well right now. If anyone, especially my wife that I said if I died, she did it, gave me Jell-O, the red flags are everywhere, Liam.
My thing is, so you're I'm glad you said that because my thing is I feel whenever we have these those serial killer documentaries and they show them buying paper towels and trash bags in the store, why are they always wearing caps and sunglasses inside? And so that's my thing now is that whenever I'm walking around the store and I see someone with a ball cap and glasses and sunglasses on, you're
looking at them. Yep.
I'm calling the cops. I'm looking at you. I'm following you home. We're getting to the bottom of you. And so I'm adding that to my list and never
no Jell-O.
Never no Jell-O. If you make me Jell-O, you're trying to kill me.
Absolutely.
So, but I also think too the Jell-O is such a weird thing because it's you're not feeling well, so you make them Jell-O. Jell-O? Like,
I was going to say, what
like,
happened to chicken noodle soup or like something like
Yeah,
that? Like, why
right.
Jell-O?
Yeah, exactly. Like my mom used to make me like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and chicken noodle soup, and like that's what would make me feel better. And like you're making them Jell-O.
Yeah, Jell-O is not my comfort food, so
Yeah, oof, yeah, definitely not. No one's comfort food. Like,
get out of here with that, Lynn.
yeah, yeah. Well, the family refuses to accept the medical examiner's ruling and started asking questions about this greenish fluid that was found inside of his stomach. But the medical examiner said it was not standard procedure to do any further tests unless there is evidence of foul play involved, because further testing was just simply too expensive.
And I'm just like hoping that later down the line you're not going to tell me that he gets like cremated or something like that.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
All your questions will be answered, Morgan. How about that? So
I have no doubt, Leo.
yeah. Well, 4 days after Glenn's death, Lynn moves in with Randy Thompson in order to comfort her somehow. And the two just end up moving on with their lives. Randy's family, however, would eventually say that they weren't even aware that Glenn had even died. And again, they thought that Lynn had been long divorced. Fast forward back to 2001, and now we're in this really interesting and familiar place. A seemingly grieving woman who is burying her significant other after they died under almost the exact same set of circumstances. Healthy men who fell ill with flu-like symptoms and who both had died seemingly in their sleep from heart attacks. Glenn's friends and family were not going to let this pass as a bizarre coincidence, though. They end up calling the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and lay this out to them, and almost immediately their interests are piqued. Meanwhile, Lynn pretty much vanishes from Randy's family's lives, and the only one who, from Randy's family who ends up hearing from Lynn after his funeral was when Lynn called Randy's sister about a life insurance payout that was sent to Randy's sister instead. Lynn sends her a signed affidavit saying a witness vouched that that benefit was intended for Lynn, that she was the actual beneficiary of that benefit. Randy's sister refuses to give it to her, though, and a judge eventually has to intervene and rules that they will have to split the money in half.
Liam, it always just blows my mind in cases like this where it's like, okay, maybe she thinks that she got away with it the first time, but like doing it completely identical, like, does she not think people aren't going to notice?
Yeah.
And like, and you're that worried about the money, like people are gonna take note, Lynn. Yeah,
the money is like that's like the only time that you reach out to like your grieving, like your ex-boyfriend's grieving family. Like it's just like ask them for money. Like that seems weird. Like the grieving process lasted for like 20 seconds. And then all of a sudden she was like on to like, hey, where's the money? Like, like, I don't know. Red flags. We're seeing a lot of those. Oh yeah. Well, this was all clearly starting to look very fishy to the family and the GBI too, even. The similarities and Lynn's behavior was just too much for them to overlook. And so police make an announcement that would blow everything out of the water.
Hi, Crime Over Wine listeners. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Heather. Now we know how much you love Liam's expert research and professionalism.
Over at the Wine Time podcast, you'll get the same expert research, but definitely a lot less professionalism.
We cover all things mom, including mom crimes. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.
So, Morgan, how's your wine tasting?
Liam, it's really good. I don't know if you could hear in the background, but I've poured myself a little bit more about twice now. So
well, I did clock that, and that was why I was like, oh, like there she goes, and I love that about you. So
the people that know me that are listening to this, they know. Yeah, I have a notoriously heavy pour, and I love my red wine. So and we love you even more for it. The larger the glass, the larger the heart. I strongly believe that. My sister always says, because my grandma yells at us for pouring like too much wine in at one time, and my sister's like, well, if it can fit it in the glass, why wouldn't they make it that big? Like that's there for a reason.
That's what I'm saying. Like there's so much in here, and yet I'm only supposed to pour up to the bend. Like
thank you.
Like cheating.
It does.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm really liking this, and I do think again, like it's definitely sweeter the more I taste it for sure. And like I have not gotten the molasses yet, but maybe by the end of the episode I'll get the molasses, a little bit of the molasses. But yeah, I am. It's really crazy. Like these types of wines who are able to blend these all these flavors together so intricately, because a lot of times I feel like you can pick out the flavors. I'm like not having a hard time, but it just it complements each other so well that it just tastes, it all kind of combines together, and it just tastes really nicely.
No, I almost feel like you saying you're having a hard time is like a compliment to the wine because it all just like goes very well together, and it's not like anything jumping out at us. No, I'm really enjoying this. I'm glad you picked this.
Yeah, I feel like it would like you said, like in a very good way, because I feel like it all just like comes together in a very nice glass, and so that's like it's definitely a compliment for sure. So yeah, I'm really into this. So good job, Seven Deadly Zins. Good job. Very good job.
And I feel like the name is so fitting for like us drinking it on this podcast.
Oh yeah. I did see this and I was like, oh, like we're talking about like murder and like
we can't pass up this opportunity.
Yeah. So okay, Morgan, what do you say we get right back into the story because we're in the thick of it?
I'm on edge of my seat, Liam. Let's go.
Okay, let's do it. Well, don't fall off. So, police announced in June 2001, just 3 months after Randy died, that they are reopening the investigation into Glenn's death.
Liam, I have a feeling you're going to say what you've said before, that we'll get there. But like, where are the kids during all of this?
Yeah, we're building something. Oh, that's actually a really great point. So Lynn has, just to remind everybody, Lynn has 2 kids with Randy, right? She doesn't have any kids as far as I'm aware with Glenn. And they're young at this point. So this is 2001. And so, yeah, so they are, hold on, I'm trying to do math really fast. They are, hold on now. I'm going to get there. The young boy is only like a year old, if that. And so the girl must have only been like 4 or 5 at this point. So yeah, that's concerning for sure. And I think like that's definitely worthy of a question, but I just don't simply know the answer to. I mean, I know that they're with Lynn.
Okay.
Point, right. Because she's still the legal mother and she's, at this point is not under active investigation by any means. So.
Well, not yet, but they reopened it. So why did they do that?
Yeah. Well, it's actually nothing found in Glenn's case necessarily. It was actually something from Randy's case. The medical examiner reruns some tests on Randy's blood and urine and finds something they truly did not expect. A chemical called ethylene glycol, a chemical most commonly found in antifreeze.
And I think everyone listening will know this, but that should not be found.
Oh, no.
In a person. No.
No, this is like pretty much from what I've looked up, like this is exclusively found in antifreeze and like that's it.
Yeah.
So like just to be clear, because episode 2, we did the Mary Reeser case. And like in that type of situation, like there are like certain scenarios where like chemicals can be made in your body, like, under like, again, we were talking about like smokers, like drinkers, that kind of thing, in that episode. So like those chemicals can be naturally created through like the perfect set of circumstances kind of thing. This is not one of those scenarios. I just want to be like so incredibly crystal clear. Like this is like, simply when you put these chemicals into your body somehow.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, they also found these crystals in Randy's kidneys and that same greenish fluid in his stomach that was found in Glenn's stomach, which the medical examiner said were more telltale signs of antifreeze poisoning. That discovery sets off a chain of events in these investigations like nothing I've ever read before. Randy's manner of death is ruled a homicide by antifreeze poisoning. And Morgan, of course, I had to do a little bit of research on antifreeze poisoning, and so I'm hoping that you're able to read what I was able to find for us.
Absolutely. So symptoms of antifreeze poisoning include nausea or vomiting, convulsions and gasping for breath, and the appearance of being drunk or disoriented, referred to as ethanol glycol intoxication. It's most common in children or pets who drink the liquid because of its sweet taste, but it's odorless. The poisoning kills by causing organ failure, typically of the kidneys or the heart. Liam, I think we just listed every symptom that both of these men had prior to and after their death. This is crazy.
Oh, absolutely. Right. So let's go back and do that again. So nausea or vomiting, both men said that they had stomach aches and they were like, vomiting, pretty profusely. Convulsions and grasping for breath too. I think that, again, that sounds like flu to me a little bit, like could feel like that anyways. And the appearance of being drunk and disoriented, that got me. Because if you remember, Glenn was, Lynn was saying that Glenn was like thinking that he was like, he could fly and like was like, really not acting himself, like that to me.
Talking to himself, like being erratic.
Right. Exactly. I mean that, it seems like, that's you drink a bunch of chemicals and like that's kind of, what you expect to act like, I would imagine anyways. And then it's also, so the sweet taste, but odorless too. That's what kind of got me because, and again, we're going to get to this a little bit later on. But like, I would, like, if it's sweet, but you can't smell it, like, I'd imagine you can just like put it in
Jello,
a sweet thing in Jello, for example. Like, I don't know, like, just like if that was
just a thought,
and like yeah, just a thought. And like, you probably wouldn't be able to taste it, right? You maybe it would taste like a little off, but like, if it's sweet, you probably don't really think anything of it. Oh, and then so then also too, there was the organ failure.
Oh yeah, the heart.
The heart, right? I mean, obviously. I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, like I'm sure like a lot of things, like I'm sure it's like compounded to like a lot of things that ends up affecting the heart. But I mean, again, both men die by heart attacks, or at least seem like it. So, yeah. Well, there are undeniable similarities between Randy and Glenn's death, and now there are serious questions about the way Randy died. Once these similarities have been brought to police's attention, they naturally have a lot of questions about Glenn's death, too. There's only one problem, though. Glenn's been dead and buried for 6 years, and if they are going to draw any sort of pattern here, they need more details on Glenn's death. So they are able to petition a judge to allow them to exhume his body.
You did tell me we would get back to it, and I'm so glad that they could do that.
Well, and also, so I feel the need to say this only because I'm going back to the Stephen Smith episode, episode 11, and because Michelle and I were talking about how rare this is to exhume people's body. I feel like ever since then, like I feel like I've brought up a lot of cases where like where the body has been exhumed. I just want to be like so incredibly crystal clear to like our listeners, like this is not something that happens in any case, like at all. Like this happens, maybe like I would like love to like maybe next time like this comes up, maybe I'll do like a little bit of a deep dive into like just how like rare this is, but this is like really not like something that happens ever.
No, and it's crazy.
They have to know something.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like they have to have like a very concrete idea of like foul play or something to one, just like the emotional like turmoil that would like put the family through, the cost, just like the logistics behind it. Yeah, I don't think this is common at all. So the fact that they were able to have a judge allow that says something.
And I do think so the state picked up the costs, I think.
Okay.
My understanding. Because the investigators petition, so it wasn't like a family thing. It was the investigators.
Got it.
So saying that they need this. It's not that for the family. So that makes it a little bit easier, right? But you're right. It's not a cheap thing to do at all. Luckily he was in state, so like that helped. But yeah, I mean it's crazy, and like again, like they have to like be so confident to put this family through that kind of trauma. Of digging up their loved one's body, literally, like cutting it back open. They have to be so confident that like they're going to find the answers they need from this. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, which is a good thing that they're not just like willy nilly and like pulling up bodies to like check out. So it's a good thing that this is rare.
Yeah, a little reassuring, very very sure. So really interestingly too, they take a look back at some other deaths connected to Lynn too. And this is a bit of a rabbit hole, so, do me a favor here, Morgan, sip some wine, stay with me, because you're like, just hold on for a second.
Ready to refill again.
Yeah, as reported by Atlanta Magazine, shortly after petitioning to exhume Glenn's body, the GBI ends up expanding their investigation into 2 other deaths under seemingly similar circumstances. The first being a major at the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office who died in 1999 of apparent respiratory failure, and the second was either a grandparent or a great-grandparent of Lynn's. Lynn was this major's administrative assistant at the time of his death, but it's really not clear if she had any sort of romantic or personal relationship with him at all. The reason this raised a particular alarms, though, is because the GBI was actually investigating the office for as much as $40,000 that had simply gone missing, poof, from the office just a few months before. Ultimately, the GBI determined that the investigation lacked any definitive evidence and determined that the major died of coronary artery disease, not poisoning. The GBI also subsequently dropped the investigation into the death of Lynn's relative for similar reasons.
I feel like we should circle back to a point that you made earlier, Liam, about her being like so money motivated and all this like crazy spending and all of that. So like it almost doesn't like matter to me whether there was any sort of like romantic relationship with this major, and then obviously with there's like family, whether it be the great grandparent or the grandparent or whatever. Like, I think romantic relations aside, like there might be like more of a common denominator with this like money, especially that you like dangled this $40,000 in front of me now. I have questions.
Well, I definitely have questions too. I'm also like, I didn't really see a whole lot about like what the investigation was like into her grandparent or great grandparent. So I think that's worth noting. Like, I don't really know if there was like money questions around that too. Like, so I'm sure there was, because otherwise why would they look there? But unless it just happened that like maybe they died under similar circumstances potentially. I don't know. Or maybe she like got some money. Unclear. But point being is, so like, you know, like going back to that major though, you know, he like a major has like a lot of power, especially back then. Like those people like really controlled the office. You know what I mean? Like they were like a chief of staff equivalent, like put it that way, to the sheriff. And so like, you know, I'm sure like his administrative assistant like knew like where the money was placed and stuff. And so like, I think there's reason to look there, right? If you're already investigating the woman for murder, a double murder, like, you know, looking at somebody else who she was connected to and who died under weird circumstances, who also may have been in connected to $40,000 that had gone missing. Like reasonable.
Right. Yeah. No stone left unturned with this girl.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. And we're going to come back to this, like, you know, table this, you know, it might be closed, but like Liam still got questions. Like Liam's still side-eyeing this quite a bit. So like, hold on for a second. So about a year later, after the proper tests are run, the medical examiner finds what they suspected the whole time. They found those crystals. They test them and found that they too are from ethylene glycol poisoning. Police then officially changed Glenn's manner of death from natural causes to homicide by antifreeze poisoning too, more than 7 years after his death. And just 5 months later, Lynn Turner, Glenn's first wife, is indicted on first-degree murder charges.
Damn, this is crazy. So was she charged with Randy's death too then?
Well, not quite yet, but police do openly say that she is their prime suspect in that case. And the only thing I can imagine here is that they are probably wanting to try Lynn twice for murder without risking a double jeopardy defense, right? If prosecutors somehow let Lynn slip through their fingers on their first go-around, they always have Randy's death to fall back on to make sure that she goes away for something.
That's a really good point. The double jeopardy stuff is just crazy.
Yeah.
To me. So yeah.
Right. It's kind of like, because again, like, I mean, they have a pretty solid freaking case in my opinion, but like assuming that they don't, for whatever reason, like they let it go the first time, like it's almost like a trial, right? Like they can like, you know, learn what they did and then just like copy paste, you know, because Franklin's copy paste case, and just like duplicate it for the second go around, and like maybe they'll get a conviction.
So true. And I know hindsight's 2020, and like we're looking at this like from it being in the past. But like at that time, why did the police think that she did it?
Well, police said that Lynn, like we were talking about, was money hungry and had found a way to financially benefit off of both of her significant others' death. In Glenn's case, it was pretty obvious, right? She was married to Glenn and was able to inherit nearly $250,000 from Glenn's entire estate, which included $150,000 in death benefits from his life insurance policy and also some money from his police pension. In Randy's case, however, it's a bit more complicated. There were reports from Randy's friends and family that in the years leading up to his death, Randy faced significant pressure from Lynn to name her as a beneficiary of his insurance policy since they were not legally married. And Randy actually at some point ended up agreeing to this. When Randy died, Lynn was able to collect $36,000 in death benefits, and she actually thought she was going to get even more than that. She expected her share of a policy worth about $400,000, but Randy stopped making payments on that a few months back, so when he died, that policy had actually already lapsed.
$400,000 is just like a crazy amount of money.
Oh my God, so much money.
So much money.
Well, and so much money for someone you're not even married to, like to accumulate.
Yeah, right. Because what they said, they were common law married, but I assume that like if he were to die, especially under suspicious circumstances, like it would be a lot more difficult if she wasn't the beneficiary of his life insurance. So she knew what she was doing.
She definitely knew what she was doing, and like, but like, kind of like, you know, because to be clear, like if you like are like convicted of murder, like you don't get a penny of that. So like, let's be clear about that. Like they don't give away money to murderers, and so like like that's really important to note too. But like, I mean, so and like I don't really know a whole lot about common law marriages, but my like understanding of them is that that like it's like if you live together with someone long enough, like you just kind of like are assumed like in like a sharing of finances and that kind of thing, like you're treated as though you're married. And so I'm assuming that was the case with this like, you know, life insurance policy and like all like these other death benefits and stuff, that they just like treated her as a beneficiary, or like she became the beneficiary because they had spent so much time together. It was almost as though they were married.
So I weirdly have some insight into common law marriage. My dad is actually in a common law marriage. So he's been with his I guess common law wife for it varies state by state how long you have to be like living together in a relationship for it to be considered common law. But I think in Pennsylvania it's 10 years. So they had been living together for that point. So for all intents and purposes, according to the state of Pennsylvania, they're married. So like if one were to pass or they were to split up, like they would treat it as if they did go like through and have a marriage certificate and everything. So it's a very interesting concept. Yeah.
Oh, that is really cool. That is really interesting. I'm glad I brought you on, because you're probably the only person I would have known to have an experience like that. So I'm so glad
that tracks, doesn't it, Liam?
Yeah, right. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Well, the district attorney said that after Randy's death, she was really struggling financially. And I mean, easy to believe if you're expecting a sudden payday of a few $100,000 and get basically absolutely nothing. Plus, her wallet was gone now, right? Randy was the main breadwinner of the house, and now she has basically next to nothing. The district attorney trying her case told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that this was a perfect recipe for another victim. She believed that Lynn may have struck again if she wasn't taken into custody when she was. The DA said, quote, "The more you do something, the easier it is, and the more emboldened you feel," end quote.
Well, I think that's exactly what I was saying before. Like, she did it the first time and she thought she got away with it. Like, she thought she executed it perfectly. What's to stop this money hungry, like malicious, potentially like sociopath from doing it to whoever else that could possibly give her a paycheck next?
And I guess like outside of like the fact that this would like mean that this like this whole situation was like a giant coincidence, like I guess just like give her the benefit of the doubt, like wouldn't you like if this is really like your intention to like do this and like try to get away with it, like wouldn't you try to like make it a little bit different? Like it seems like she like literally committed the same crime twice, like assuming that she's guilty, right? So like why wouldn't she change it? Like why wouldn't she like put it in like the orange juice instead or something? You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
Yeah, like you said before, she copy and pasted literally down to the Jell-O. So
Well, Lynn would spend the next few years of her life waiting for and preparing to face a jury to convince them that she did not kill Glenn and Randy in cold blood. And that would prove to be a treacherous uphill battle. Lynn would face separate trials for both Glenn and Randy's murders. The first came in May of 2004, when the prosecution can finally start laying out their case for how they believe Lynn poisoned her husband Glenn over several days by slipping this deadly chemical into his sweet tea, his food, and possibly one final and fatal dosage into the Jell-O that she fed him right before he died. That trial, though, had received considerable publicity at this point, so it was moved to Houston County, just south of Macon. Lynn was not charged with Randy's death at this point, but again, she was considered a suspect. But despite objections from Lynn's attorneys, the judge allowed the prosecution to present evidence about Randy's death too, which the defense says was really the moment when they believe that they lost this case. And, you know, Morgan, too, there is this like really crazy story that happens during the trial, and I just have to tell you about it. So, you know, grab that glass and like make sure you have it handy, because so the prosecution calls a former animal shelter worker to the stand, and she testifies that in April of 1999, so 4 years after Glenn died but about 2 years before Randy had died, Lynn went to the shelter and asked the worker what kind of effect antifreeze would have on cats. Lynn said it was because she had this stray cat in her neighborhood that was bothering her, but when the worker kind of like shakes off this question and says like, I don't really know. Lynn asks about the euthanasia process for cats and asks if the chemical that is used to euthanize cats is available for purchase for the general public.
All right, Liam, as a fellow animal lover, I think I can speak for both of us in this statement. I didn't like this lady before. I really don't like her now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, so I have a couple of thoughts about like this like interaction too. So like, but like I also really want to hear just like your thoughts about like her asking about this. So you go first and then I'll go.
I don't know. I feel like it's so odd to like start with the fact that antifreeze would have on cats instead of the euthanasia process, because wouldn't that be like the logical first place to start when you go to a shelter? Like,
right.
Like,
Why
let's start
antifreeze?
with that, and then, depending on the answer, go into the antifreeze. But yeah, that I don't. I don't know. I don't have a good feeling. I don't have warm and fuzzies.
Me neither. Well, so I have a couple thoughts. So here, so I'll
Yes, I
dive
wanna
into
hear
this
it.
one because sure, like cats different than humans, like sure. So like if like you know that doesn't necessarily like mean 1 + 1 = 2, I guess, kind of thing, but like kind of like. So I guess like on that front, like sure, but it's also I think says a lot about her as a person that she's like willing to like poison a cat by antifreeze just because it's like bothering her, kind of like it's not like it's like killing like things like you know, like it's not like posing a danger to like anybody, you know what I mean? So like that feels kind of weird. But also, so did you notice what year this all happened in?
So 1999.
Yeah, right. So again, so we're right in the middle of, so it was 4 years after Glenn died. So like obviously she's not asking about him. Like maybe she's asking about Randy. But where my mind went though, Morgan, it was going back to 1999. That major in the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. You know when he died? He died in 1999. And so like sure, like they said that this was unrelated, like not enough evidence, blah blah whatever. But still, I mean, like why? Like it's like too early for Randy, too late for Glenn. Like, you know, I'm just saying that, like, you know, it feels like a weird coincidence that like that's the year that he died, and like police think that she may possibly have something to do with that too.
And that's why you're the host of this podcast, because you picked up on that, and I didn't. My mind didn't even go there. That is crazy.
Oh, I saw this, like, there was, like, one article about this, like, this testimony, and, like, that's when, like, my rabbit hole just started. I was like, I need to find this guy's obit, like, I need to do the whole thing, like, I'm gonna get this woman locked up for this, too. But
and for the cats, justice for the cats that she may or may not have
and justice
hit
for
with
the cats.
antifreeze.
Right. I'm like, listen, like, if my dogs are just, like, wandering around and you try to kill them with antifrease, like, I'll come after you, and, like, I'll be justified for it. So, yeah, I'm not happy with her at all for even asking about that. But, you know, clearly she has, like, you know, other things to worry about, I guess. But whatever. So at the end of the trial, the jury deliberated for 5 hours. And when they came back, they saw the evidence clear as day that Lynn Turner poisoned, at the very least, her husband of almost 2 years as a way to profit financially off of his death. She was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
So I know that, like, the length of time that the jury deliberates isn't, like, necessarily, like, 100% correlated to what the verdict's going to be, but the 5 hours seems very telling to me. Like, they probably went in all kind of having their thoughts, and then they just had to go through, like, the semantics of reviewing everything that, I'm
sure there's a lot of evidence to go through,
but, like, 5 hours, that's not a lot of time.
Not for a murder charge, And I guess, like I could see, like, maybe, like, that amount of time, like, being, like, trying to win over, like, 1 or 2 jurors. Like, and I'm trying to think back to, like, Alec Murdoch, because I think that they deliberated for not that long either. But I did read that they had to, like, that they had to win over, like, 1 or 2 jurors in that one too.
Oh, that's so interesting. And also another thing to point out, that you mentioned a little bit earlier was that they did move this to a different county, so she couldn't even argue that this is like a tainted jury or whatever. Like, they moved it for that very reason, and they still only needed 5 hours.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very good point. Immediately after this verdict, the prosecution tells reporters that they will be impaneling a grand jury to indict Lynn Turner for Randy Thompson's murder, too. That trial was moved to Whitfield County, Georgia, just south of Chattanooga, Tennessee. The prosecution's argument was really similar to the argument they laid out in Glenn's trial, that Lynn wanted to profit financially from Randy's death, and that she took the chemical, slipped it into Randy's food, and when he became severely ill, put the the final dose into his Jell-O, which killed him just a few hours later. This time, however, the prosecution is going after the death penalty, and if she received this sentence, she would become only the second woman on Georgia's death row in its history. The defense responds saying that Randy has had a long and complicated medical history. They presented evidence that Randy became ill in 1997 and again in 1999 after taking too much pain medication.
And not that I consider myself like well-versed in poisoning at all, but I do find it interesting that it seems like it only took a couple days and then like the one final dose to be so lethal. That's kind of crazy to me.
It is kind of crazy. And so I thought that too, because my thought was on that front, like maybe she did just like do like a little bit, like just enough. Like she probably did a good amount of research, like figure out like clearly did more than like ask the woman at the animal shelter, like what to do about this. And so like, you know, probably did just a little bit in the food, like, and like spread it out enough to like make him sick. Right. And then like so that way, like everyone knew that he was sick, like really ill, didn't know what to do, like knew that he went to the hospital to like make a good argument for like when he finally died. You know, like, you know, that was like whenever, like that must have been whenever she gave like this final like fatal dose. And so like, you know, he just looked like he died of natural causes or like died of this illness. And like no one would even really think twice about it, I guess. Like that's I mean, again, not a murderer, but like I probably sound like I'd like know a lot more about poisoning than I should. But like that was my assumption here. Like that feels like the right answer to that.
No, that makes so much sense, because if she's just like slowly putting it in, then they have all of those symptoms that she can kind of like refer back to, and then the people know about it and everything. So
yeah. Well, but then also too, I have to go back a little bit only because did you notice just now, like, you know, what year, like they said that, you know, that Randy just like weirdly got sick because of his pain medication. 1999. And like, again, like that was the year that she went to this like shelter. So like maybe she was trying to kill him then too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just an idea. Like, I don't know. Just like if like this was the evidence that they presented that like he became really sick, you know, after like taking too much pain medication, like, are we sure about that? Like, we sure it was pain meds? Like, just a thought. Like, I don't know.
Pain meds, antifreeze, like it could be either.
Could look the same. I mean, I would imagine though, like those kind of like, you know, like close to overdose, you know, symptoms are probably about the same, right? Because like what is poisoning except for being like overdosing on a chemical? So I would think it probably would be about the same. So like maybe you don't really know the difference.
No, I totally agree.
Well, none of those arguments from her defense team worked, however. Lynn Turner was found guilty again on March 27th, 2007. The jury did not, however, sentence her to death. They instead sentenced her to a second life sentence, again, without the possibility of parole.
I kind of get that, though. I feel like if she already has been sentenced to a life sentence, and then you don't really want to be that person that's responsible for putting someone on death row. Like, if you know that no matter what, she's already going to be in jail for the rest of her life. Like, I kind of understand the jury's reasoning on that.
And too, I think noted, like, a lot of times, like, in those types of situations, like, when you're, like, found guilty of one crime and then face trial for another crime and then sentenced for that, like, a lot of times you have to, like, serve out that first sentence before, and, like, obviously, like, you know, once she serves out the sentence, like, she's dead.
Of
so,
life,
you know, right. So like, and sometimes they can like, you know, they can like one supersedes the other kind of thing, but like judges can really do whatever like they want in that type of situation. But yeah, but too, I mean, I always think about that because I was talking about that with my friends Rachel and Heather, the Darlie Routier case. Like we were talking about, like, would you ever be able to? And so I'm going to pose this question to you, Morgan. Would you ever be able to sentence someone to death?
Okay, so it's so funny. I feel like you picked the perfect case for me. So I did my senior sem research paper on Darlie Routier, or however, I'm like, am I butchering her name right now? And I wrote a whole paper on her.
Darlie, no, yeah. No, I think you said it right.
I don't know. I genuinely don't. And her case is so tricky because if you like do a deep dive, listeners, into that, it's just absolutely wild. And I was going to mention this earlier and I didn't.
Go listen to episode 12.
But if I were ever, one of my biggest like fears in life is being falsely accused of a crime. And so I like tell anyone that will listen, I'm like, I would do a trial by judge over a jury trial any day. And it's because of her case. They literally, there's a juror that like on camera, like on oath says that like she thought that she couldn't trust her from the beginning because she had fake boobs. Like jurors sentence with their prejudice, with their hearts, with their emotions, where a judge has to look at the law and the case that's being provided, right? And it has to be without a doubt, like, guilty, like there's nothing else, where I think a jury could probably sway either way. Yeah. So I don't know. That's such a loaded question, Liam. I know the cop-out answer is it would have to be like a case-by-case thing, but like it would, right?
Fair. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think I would be able to sentence Lynn to death. I feel like it would have to be like the most gruesome crime. Like I feel like the Israel Keys or the like the Ted Bundys of the world. Like, yeah, I would definitely be able to do that.
And there has to be DNA. There has to be some irrefutable like evidence, not just she copy and pasted the way she killed her husband.
Right. I like this type of situation. I would never be able to see myself getting there. But I also, since you brought up Darlie Routier, because you know I'm obsessed with that case, like I need to know like what, like, are you on team guilty or are you on team innocent for Darlie Routier?
I think it changes legitimately every day. And like when I tell you I like spiraled writing that paper, I think I get so like focused on just the absolute like injustice of her trial. Like her trial was horrible, regardless of if she did it or not. Absolutely horrible.
Yeah, no major problems.
I don't know. I go back and forth, but like,
wait, what did you write your paper on though with that?
So it was for, I forget, it was one of the senior comm classes, and it was just like how the media portrays women, especially when they're like the villain of the story, okay. And kind of what like is hyperfixated on in terms of like headlines. So I pulled all of the headlines of that case and kind of just like broke it down into which ones included anything about her appearance, anything like about her being blonde, big boobs, like jewelry, the whole 9 yards, and what just had the facts of the case. And there were hardly any. Like, it was just so, it was crazy.
Man, I should have had you on that. We should have brought you on for that
I know,
episode.
right? I'm like, let me share my paper with you. I could be a source for that podcast episode.
Oh my God, literally. I feel, okay, well, like, we're going to need to, like, conference you in with Rachel. And I'm sure, like, Rachel and Heather are listening right now. And, like, we're going to have to, like...
No, I want to hear their thoughts because I have thoughts.
yeah, for sure. Oh, we all have. Well, all three of us have a lot of thoughts about that case. So we're gonna have to talk about that.
It's a doozy. It is a doozy.
Yeah, it's a doozy. Well, Lynn maintained her innocence the whole time. Her legal team had worked on and lost an appeal on her conviction for Glenn's murder and was working through the appeals process on Lynn's conviction for Randy's murder in August of 2010. Lynn's mother and her 2 kids came to visit her in prison, and her mother said she was in pretty rough shape. She said she seemed fine physically, but emotionally was a different story. Lynn's mother told CBS News that she was really concerned for her daughter's safety because right as she was leaving, Lynn said to her mom, quote, "Mama, these girls are going to get me. I just know they will," end quote. The next day, Lynn was found dead in her prison cell, wrapped in blankets, seemingly in her sleep, just as her husband and boyfriend were found 15 and 9 years before, respectively. The medical examiner said there was no evidence of foul play and ruled it an apparent suicide by overdose of prescription blood pressure medications.
Liam, I know we're on FaceTime, but you can't see my face right now, and I really wish you could. My jaw is, like, on the floor.
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah. What an ending.
Poetic justice?
A little bit, right? I mean, because, like, an overdose of these pills and, like, of, like, a chemical, basically, when, like, you're accused of, like... killing these people and like you die in your sleep, like, yeah, seriously, poetic justice.
And I don't know why, but the part about wrapped in blankets, just like the 2 men were, that just like sends chills down my spine. I don't know. Oh my God.
Yeah, man. Yeah, this is. Yeah, again, there's like another part where when I saw this, I was like, wait a darn minute. I was like, that cannot be the end of this. But like, I mean, I don't know. It's also like, so like, sure, I'm sure she was getting it a lot in jail at this point, but like she'd been in jail for like 3 years at this point.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I mean, I could see where it just like, you know, all gets to her all at once and like, you know, maybe it's the end. But I also frankly could see a world where like it was, you know, done to her again, because like jails, like they don't mess around.
Scary place.
Right? Yeah, scary place. And so I could see a world, I guess, where they were like, oh, like, you want to kill your husbands? Like, here you go. And like, slipping and like, force feeding it to her. So like, I don't know. Just, I don't know. I don't mean to take away too much of this because like too much from that because like it's still like a weird ending and like no one really wins in this situation, at the end of the story, unfortunately. But like that's kind of where we're at, right?
No, we could spiral on that for sure. And I know that prison like undoubtedly has their own like justice system, if you will, right? So like that's totally a viable option. But for me, just from like the kind of like basic like knowledge I had of this case prior to, and then all the details you provided, it seems like she just finally accepted defeat and she was like, I'm never gonna get this money. That was the main reason I did this. Like, I'm caught. I have 2 life sentences. Like, what are the chances I get out? I'd rather not spend the rest of my life in prison where potentially I could be like harassed and whatever by the other inmates. I feel like maybe she was just like, nope, this is it for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like you probably are right. Like, I feel like it does kind of seem a little hopeless at a certain point, right? I mean, especially, like, again, like, putting, like, there's no doubt in my mind that she's guilty, but, like, let's say that she's innocent for whatever reason. Like, I could see a world where it's just, like, I don't see, like, the end of this at all. And so, like, I guess, like, like, I lost all these appeals, like, what else am I going to do with this? Like, live behind these bars for the rest of my life? Like, I've seen so many times, like, cause I actually, like, cause the Michael Peterson, the Kathleen Peterson, Michael Peterson case, just an episode of my podcast just came out, this morning, at the recording of this episode. And so, I've been really diving back into that case because that's like such a fascinating case. And so I've been watching the docuseries on Netflix, and he like had this like really kind of powerful, moment where he was just like, like, again, because he said he was innocent, like he still says he's innocent to this day, and he just had this like really powerful moment where he was just like, am I just going to spend the rest of my life back here? And I still didn't know what the heck to make of that case, and so like, I just put myself in his shoes of like him being innocent, and it's like what happens when you're like put behind bars and like you really like that you didn't do anything, obviously, but like no one else believes you,
That's the thing, that no one else believes you, I think would be the hardest pill to swallow in an instance like that.
Yeah, and like kind of what we were talking about before, like my because like my biggest fear too is like being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and like my DNA is like in a future crime scene. Like that's my biggest fear. Like
we are the same person, Liam. It's been confirmed tonight.
But like, I mean, seriously though, because if you're in that situation, and a lot of times too, they want to just, there's so much pressure on these types of cases, like they just want to put someone behind bars, like, your DNA being at a crime scene like just feels like the right answer. And so I don't know, again, different rabbit hole, different podcast, but man, like there's just so much to like, I think she's guilty, like in my book, like I there's no doubt in my mind on that front. But like, if it, with like this one, like maybe like the like 0.5% of my brain that like says that she might be innocent. I just like that goes to my point of like, that must just be so heavy to deal with.
So heavy.
So I don't know. I guess I kind of like give her that only because of like, what we kind of know how kind of happened to her, I guess, but I don't know. That's just my thought. Well, yeah.
That was a lot, Liam. We both had to take a deep breath after that.
Yeah. Oh man, it was, right. Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna say, I'll just like move on from that and say, Morgan, that is, kind of a morbid way to end the podcast, but I am gonna say that's all we have for you this week. So thank you so much for coming on. It was great to see you.
Liam, thank you so much for having me. This is literally like the highlight of my month. This is so fun. Combining like 3 of my favorite things, you, true crime, and red wine. Oh like, it's been perfect.
Listen, I love you. Listen, I love any human being that, will just like sit around, talk about a crime case and just like drink some wine together. That's my kind of girly.
Yep.
So.
Absolutely.
Love that. Well, tell everyone where they can find you and your work online if you'd like.
I would actually like to plug one thing. So, in the like depths of COVID, my friend Maggie and we made a book review Instagram. Liam, I don't even know if you follow this, but
I definitely don't. I want to follow
you.
Right now.
Okay, you'll follow it right after this. It's bitches_who_read. And we just read the books that we're reading, and then we do a basis based off of 5 stars, a review. So it has kind of just like a short review from either one of us or both of us, a little yeah, we kind of have a good amount of followers, right, Liam? I see your.
You have like 4,000 followers.
Yeah, it was my
am, like,
passion project during COVID.
I love this. I love this idea. I did not know you did this, and I am shocked. But also, you did a lot of books that I like actually really want that are on my list too.
Phenomenal.
Okay, wait. So say it again. So it's at _bitches_who_read and as on Instagram, and that is such a great idea, and I cannot wait to read all about this. Well, we are definitely going to tag it. So if you are listening to this podcast and are trying to and couldn't keep up with what I just said about the handle, go to our Instagram page, because I will definitely be tagging that Instagram page in our post about this episode. So go back and watch that. And then you'll find all of Morgan's book reviews, because I think that's a great idea and I love that so much.
Thank you, Liam. But that's really the only exciting thing about me that I have to plug. So
yeah, well, I love
you doing that is just wonderful.
Well, I love that. I'm glad you did that, and we'll definitely have a chat about that for sure, because I love that idea. Well, thank you again so much for coming on, Morgan. And thank you all so much for listening. We are going to put all of our sources on our website so you can read everything for yourself and probably come up with a few theories too. And if you are enjoying this podcast and are just wondering how you can tell anyone and everyone about it, the best way to help people find this podcast is by leaving us a 5-star review wherever you are listening right now. So make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we will see you next week for another episode of Crime Over Wine.
Proud member of the Podnuga Network.